One thing, one thing I did notice about masks that I like, if I don't know the words, nobody knows. I was just going, it looks like I'm saying the right words. It looks like I'm thinking the right thing, but who knows? Who knows what's really going on up here? Um, yeah, and the other thing too is this is really cool, isn't it? This is I've been praying. I've been praying for some normalcy, and this is oh yeah, I could do this. Speaking of normalcy, I've been praying for some normalcy. You know, I got a chance to preach with different states, and I get to sit in my office at home and do it. It's okay, but it's like when you say something and you expect some kind of reaction, you hear nothing, and then later on you're saying something and a reaction comes. And it just, the things it just doesn't seem right. But it's really cool. And Allie, thank you so much. Where'd you go? That was awesome. That kind of led right into what I want to talk about right here, too. Last week, was it last week? I think last Saturday we went on a walk. I got a chance to hang out with the Mercer men. I learned a couple of things. The things I learned about Paris, I promised not to say. A couple of things I did learn about. I learned about, and what this sermon is going to be about, is called the Jesus Rock. All you guys know what I'm talking about. So basically, we walked and we walked and we walked. And we walked on a mountain, Sourland Mountain Preserve we walked on. It was cool. I had a really, really good time. I learned a couple things. One thing I learned is how important it is where you put your feet, where you stand, where you are, what you're thinking, what's going on, how you're paying attention. The other thing I learned is the Mercer guys are pretty cool. I had a pretty good time. It was neat hanging out. We got a chance to really hang out for a while, and you get to see temperament come out when you're walking through the mountain and you don't know where you are. I had to trust Paris a lot, but it was good. He did us no wrong. He did a very good job. The one thing about it is when we're walking, there's rocks everywhere. All right? I'm talking about boulders. I'm talking about stones. I'm talking about, for you those guys that aren't familiar with New Jersey too much, we have quarries everywhere. And one reason why is because we have so many stones, so many rocks. There's a place called Trap Rock right over down the road a piece. And if I understood correctly, they're a company that invented that stone that they put on the side of trains, of railroads. That's what it's called, Trap Rock. So it came from that place where they took the big boulders, they broke them up, they put them there, it became a good bed for the trains, all kinds of cool things. I always thought as a kid, you couldn't run on them to try to catch up to the train. That's why I thought they were invented, but I think I'm wrong. So basically, you're thinking about how many rocks are here. You need to find, when you're walking in a path, when you're walking down that mountain or up the mountain or whichever way we were going, the one thing you had to really look for is a good rock embedded deep in the ground. On that rock, you could do what? Whatever you wanted. If I could dance, I could dance. If I had my mask, I could sing. I could do whatever I needed to do on that good strong. But what about the other rocks? There's little rocks that aren't really that deep in the ground. What happens when you step on those? You could fall down. Everything could be, if you're standing on a good hard rock, you could say anything, do anything, and you feel comfortable. If you're standing on that little wobbly one, what are you doing? You're thinking about that wobbly rock and that wobbly rock only. And I see lots of rocks seem good to step on, but they're not deep in the ground like you think. Sometimes we're walking on a path and are we're not thinking about anything. We're just walking on the path. That's where Paris was telling us that we were on autopilot. We were just not paying attention. Wow. We're not paying attention to what was going on around us, right? We're walking through some of the coolest scenery Now, if you guys, some people aren't from New Jersey all the time, but some are. I like New Jersey. I have, maybe there's only a few of us, but I like New Jersey. We have a little bit of everything. We have oceans, we have mountains, we have cities, we got whatever you want, really. You can find it here. But when you're walking on that path sometimes and there's no rocks, what are you doing? Just walking, not paying attention to what's going on around you. But no, the thing is, you're probably in more danger than you think. Because when you're paying attention to what's going on and you're thinking about looking for that Jesus rock, that's what's the important thing to do, right? In our lives. Everything going on around us, every decision we're making, everything that's going on, we need to look for that Jesus rock. We need to look for some kind of strong thing that we could stand on when we make it. Sometimes that could be people. Is there people around us that know how to do this? If you're buying, you think about a rock, and of course I'm going to get to the wise man builds his house on a rock. How could I not? When you think about it, I'm not building a house, Tom, so let's not talk about this. Okay, what are we building? What are we working on? How are we doing things? What's going on? Are we new parents or are we new grandparents? Are we new at a job or are we, like some people, getting ready to retire from that job? All of them bring about, like Ali was saying, the different things in her life that went on. That was just so perfect. I was like, these people were paying attention to what I was writing. You could jump on a rock and you can stand and dance on that rock. And if you want, you can do anything on that rock if it's the what? The Jesus rock. We need to look for that deep rock to step on, and we need Jesus in all our decisions. Small ones and easy ones, yes, even the super deep ones. So unless God builds your house, you build it in vain. Let's look at Ephesians 2:20, please. Okay, so we're building a house, right? We're building our life. We're building a job. We're building whatever thing's going on in our lives. In Ephesians 2:20, it says, built on the foundation of the apostles and the prophets with Christ Jesus himself as the chief cornerstone. So if we're building something, what is the cornerstone? Yeah, it's like the most strongest. It's the where it comes off of. If you ever I've worked construction. I've worked a lot of stuff. I worked in a building one time, and we put up these metal studs across the wall, and we had to put sheetrock up, and it was like 30 feet in the air. It was a lot of work. We started off with the first one, and guess what? It was crooked. So I got the smart idea to make this piece of wood about this long and every time I put it up, I put up a new one, worked up there. By the time we got to the end, it looked like chevrons. They were all angled. It was horrible. Why? Because where we started was no good. That's what we got to do. When we're making these decisions, we got to start where? With Jesus. Or maybe even Jesus-like people. Does that make sense? We're not going to be able to, it's funny because I was thinking about that. Retirement is a big part of our lives right now. I got about a year and a half, a quarter left maybe, and I could retire. And it's getting me nervous. And I can't pick up my Bible and go to First Retirement 3 and look up exactly what to do. I can't. But there's a lot of men and women that are around the church that have retired that I could talk to. There's people out there for us. I think, during this pandemic era, we kind of lost that contact with people, right? Here we are. I'm just so cool looking everybody in the face. I'm not electronically looking at John Patrick. You know what I mean? I'm looking at him. He's here. It's really cool. But that's what we got to remember. Who is our cornerstone? Is that deep rock a cornerstone? Is that our cornerstone in our decision making? What is our cornerstone? What is that thing that we're going through? What is the thing we're praying about? What's the thing we're thinking about? Are we changing jobs? Are we moving? Are we doing both? Are we doing, having children? Not have, there's tons of stuff out there that's going on. Are we looking for that strong rock when we make our plans and our decisions? Here's another one. I struggled over how to write this. Usually, when I write it, I give it to my wife. My wife looks at it and she tells me, "Don't say that. Say this." This is one of the ones we went back on. Do we trust God or do we trust ourselves? If you're anything like me, my worst enemy is me. Guaranteed. If I could get rid of me, if there was a way, if I could get me out of the way, man, I would be doing so much better. Every time I look back at it and see something went haywire, I could trace it back to me. We love them detective shows, the real detective shows on TV. And I kind of learn a lot from them, and I use me as an example all the time. Who is our rock when we need help? Who do we have in our lives? Who is that person? Yes, I know that. Yeah, I wrote this down. I says, yeah, you know where I'm going. Please turn to Matthew 7:24. It's called The Wise and Foolish Builder. Now, this one, you think about it, really, because it starts off talking about listening to God. It doesn't start off talking about building a house. It says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who builds his house on a rock. So, who listens to the word and puts it into practice. That's an important part. When the rain comes, what's the rain in our lives? When the craziness comes, when the pandemic comes, when money problems come, when this comes, when that comes, when our car breaks down on the highway. But see, when that comes, the stream rose and the winds blew and it beat against the house. Yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who builds his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew, and it beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash. Do we use the word of God to help us with making decisions? That's what it's saying, right? The wise man who listened to the word built his house on a rock. Do we build our houses on that rock? Are we making those steps on that big, strong rock? Or are we taking the easy way, that little one that you could just kind of touch a little bit and go? I'm telling you, I was really happy I had big feet that day. Because, they put your foot out, you got a lot more chance to get something good. Do we use godly people to help us make our choices in life? Are our plans made with the help of God? Is our life built on a strong foundation so we are ready when the floods and the craziness comes? I think right now I'm a safety guy at work. This is what I kind of do on one of my many side jobs. And we just had a big thing about hand safety with gloves and all the stuff that you have to do. And it's funny because one of the guys that was sitting right next to me when I was doing it just cut his hand pretty bad. And I would have never thought that would have been something to even talk about. You know what I mean? It doesn't happen. But even with this pandemic, how many of us thought that for a year and a half we were going to have to stay home? Some of us stayed home and worked. Some of us did other things. We didn't have that plan. That wasn't planned. If that was our plan, it wouldn't work that way, right? You just think about all the things. When a crazy time comes, I think for us guys that were ready, we had a good, strong foundation in God. We knew that God will take care of us no matter what was happening. We did a little better, right? People who didn't have that kind of lost everything, right? They kind of didn't have any strength. They didn't have anything that they were looking at. A lot of times, I know when I went through my health issues with my heart problem, at first I was really scared. But then I started talking to one of the brothers is a doctor. He helped me a lot. Of course, my wife is a rock. Man, forget it. I'm like falling apart, and she's looking at me like, it's okay. It'll be okay. And it was. But that's what you got to remember too. With God, look back at things that happened in our lives. And with God, whatever happened, they're okay. Things became okay. If that whirlwind of changes for the seasons or the steady path, is your life a whirlwind of changes for the seasons, or is it a steady path to heaven? What are we doing? When things happen, do we really make quick decisions and go running for it? Or do we stop and try to get help, try to do things? I think that's where I get and believe me, it's one of them things like I learned in AA. When one finger's pointing out, four fingers are pointing right back at you. That's me. I'll make, sometimes I'm scared to come home and tell Karen some of the decisions I made because I know she's going to look at me and give me that look. I'm sure all us husbands know that look. Or some wives know the look too. You make some wacky decisions on the ride home, like, let's do this, let's do that. And then all of a sudden, she's like, and then you're like, you got to walk it away. Can we dance on the rock of God when others would be worried? Are we actually looking? Are we making those decisions? That's one of the things I thought about too. When we really, this is a parenting thing. We have a 40-year-old, so we've been through a bunch. I got him when he was a teenager, right? That's when you want to talk about something that's not fair. Try starting to be a parent of a teenager. It just wasn't the way it was designed at all. But we put a lot of work into that, into being a parent. I think now is when we reap the benefits. When you build your house on a foundation, when you're doing stuff, when you're working hard, that's when you get the stuff that you need. All right, what do you think we need next? Let's look at Proverbs 24, 3 through 4, please. I'm almost over. In Proverbs 24, it says, by wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it is established. Through knowledge its rooms are filled with rare and beautiful treasures. What is wisdom to us? What do we think of when we think of the word wisdom? Do we think of old people? It's getting harder to find old people for me. I think of wise. Like I always think of Andy Cozart when I think of wisdom. When I look at the word wisdom, I just that pops into my head because he was like the first real. He was like my spiritual dad. That's the way he treated me, and Doris like spiritual ma. It was really cool. And if that's what you're thinking, where do we get that wisdom? Where's our wisdom well? You know what I mean? When our horse is thirsty, we bring it to the well, right? We watched something about Indians and horses yesterday. It was so cool. But it was like, where do we bring our horse to get to the closest well? To the well we know is filled with clean, cool water. Where do we go to in our crazy times for our clear, cool water? Where do we go for our understanding? A lot of times, how many times have you said that to yourself? This does not make any sense. I don't understand it. I work for this massive company that for 22 years now, and I think I've worked for 6 companies inside the same companies because of mergers and buyouts and all this kind of stuff. And the same thing again. The other day we're talking about the days off you get for something, and all of us looked at each other and said the famous words, this doesn't make sense. And the problem is, if you walk around my company and you start asking people how something works with HR, it's all according to where they came into the company, that's their answer. So when we were back and we were an old company called Airco, that company had some of the best. Then Lindy took over. Then BOC took over. Then Air Products took over. Then now it's Praxair took over. All these are industrial gas companies, but they're all different. And each time I had to learn it, even passwords doesn't make sense. Where do we get our knowledge? You know what I mean? I think that's an important part. Where do we dig? Where do we go? I had a discussion the other day about spiritual books. And I got a little bit, I don't want to say argument because that doesn't sound good. We got a little heated discussion on whether you're allowed to read other books besides the Bible. And I love reading other books besides the Bible. It's even funny. I like them when they're wrong. You know what I mean? I was reading something the other day, and the guy just went off on this whole tangent. And I was like, man, you were doing so good, dude. This book is like 3/4 of the way through, and you're like doing it. Oh, this is great. I can't wait to get home and read some of it. Then all of a sudden he went, and I'm like, oh. Next. Where do we get our knowledge? Where do we get our wisdom? Where do we get our understanding? Let's look at Psalm 127. This is basically saying the same thing. Verse 1. It says, unless the Lord builds the house, the builder labors in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the guard stands watch in vain. So think about that. Unless God builds your house. And know what's funny about it? If you would have asked me who built my house, I would have said me. Unless I build my house with God's help. It's kind of like the whole God is your co-pilot. He better not be. He better be your pilot. Right? Not a co-driver, not extra guy around. He better be the guy making the decisions for you. Because I know if I'm making the decisions, we're in trouble. Very big trouble. Because I tried doing it for 36 years and I was homeless. I was a mess when I was making the decisions. I let God start making the decisions. Now I got an awesome wife, got kids, got grandkids, got all kinds of really cool stuff going on. I'm here talking to you people. Figure that one out. So let's look at, in conclusion, I ask you, who is building your house? Who's the one in charge of it? And yes, your house could be many things. Could be family, could be jobs, could be relationships. So many things that we need God's help with. God loves us and cares for us in all things. He will never forsake you or turn on you. He is not your family. He is not your friend growing up. He is not your get-rich-quick scheme. He is not on your side. He is on your side. I'm sorry. He is on your side. I got the knots. I got carried away with the knots. Sorry. Let me repeat that one. He is on your side, and he loves you. Most important, he is so much bigger than us. He is the sheriff. I don't even know what that meant. And sometimes I forget that. And what do I have to do? I have to just open up the Bible and go to the very, very beginning and look at how God created everything. If God creates the heaven, the earth, and everything in it, you think he could help me with my job problems? You think he could figure a way of me getting through traffic? I hope this helps you guys. I really do. I know that walk through the Sourland Mountain Preserve really helped me out a lot. I know Sean was telling me he's been walking every day since. That's really cool. And I was excited. I hope you guys can invite me again. And just love you guys. And God bless you all. Amen.